Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. Coming up in the next hour. US voters to elect the 47th President of the United States of America. Both Harris and Trump make last-minute appeal to voters to exercise their franchise. US expresses dissatisfaction over humanitarian aid situation in Gaza. Says Israel must get more aid into Gaza ahead of 30-day deadline. North Korea fires several short-range missiles toward sea east of Korean Peninsula. Japan says missile fell outside its exclusive economic zone. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar condemns attack on Hindu temple in Canada. Says Canada has developed a pattern of making allegations without providing specifics. Let's get you the latest on the US presidential polls first as the race to the White House nears the finish line. With US presidential elections just next day, both candidates Kamala Harris and Donald Trump made last-minute pitch to remind voters about their choice. Vote, vote and come out for vote were the words being pitched by both Democratic and Republican candidates in their respective rallies. Former US President and Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump addressed the rally in Raleigh, North Carolina, one of the 7 battleground states, on November 4. He made fervent appeal to voters to come out and vote.
Expression actually, but it's ours to lose. Does that make sense to you? It's ours to lose. If we get everybody out and vote, there's not a thing they can do. And you're going to say that to her. You're going to say, you've done a terrible job, you're grossly incompetent, we're not going to take it anymore. Kamala, you're fired. Get the hell out. Get the hell out of here. You're out of here. Get out of here.
Democratic presidential nominee and US Vice President Kamala Harris also addressed a rally in Scranton, Pennsylvania on November 4th. She too made appeal to her supporters and volunteers not to lose chance to vote on November 5th if they have not done till now.
These next 24 hours, I know everyone is here, including our youngest leaders. I see you over there. I know you're not ready to vote because you look like you're about 8, but you tell the adults in your life why it's important. They vote, okay? Let's get this done.
Former independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. released a social media video urging his supporters not to vote for him on the ballot. He appealed to the vote for the Republican candidate Donald Trump. He had earlier withdrawn his candidature, but the US Supreme Court had denied removing his name from the ballot in Wisconsin and Michigan for the November 5th election.
A lot of people are asking me if they live in a red state or a blue state, should they still be voting for me? What about swing states? The answer is easy, no. No matter what state you live in, you should be voting for Donald Trump.
Both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris also addressed rallies in Pennsylvania. Trump addressed in Reading and Pittsburgh, while Harris campaigned in 5 Pennsylvania cities. Pennsylvania is the biggest prize among the battleground states, offering 19 of the 270 electoral college votes a candidate needs to win the presidency. Election offices in the US have tightened security ahead of polling in the country. Hardened strategies such as active shooter drills will be undertaken based on their experience since 2020 and an increase in harassment and threats directed at election workers. The US election offices have tightened security this year in anticipation of possible violence. De-escalation techniques are routinely taught to employees in many offices. Drills for active shooters and other disturbances have also been conducted. Steel doors and bulletproof glass have been added to hundreds of election offices. And it's just a day left for the US presidential polls, and security, like we just told our viewers, is tightened ahead of the US presidential polls. And both the candidates are making last-minute appeal to the voters to come out in large numbers and vote. Both candidates, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, made last-minute pitch to remind voters about their choice. They said, vote, vote and come out for vote. These were the words being pitched by both Democratic and Republican candidates in their respective rallies. Former US President and Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump addressed the rally in North Carolina, one of the 7 battleground states, on November 4. He made a fervent appeal to voters to come out and vote. And now I've been joined by my colleagues Shubhendu Ghosh and Amit Pal Singh. Shubhendu Ghosh is joining us from Washington, D.C., whereas Amit Pal Singh is joining us from Palm Beach, Florida, to give us a sense of what's happening in the United States. It's just a day left for the presidential polls there. Hello, gentlemen, both of you. First to you, Shubhendu. Tell us about the preparations. Just a day left, and it will be decided who will be sitting in the Oval Office. How's the atmosphere there right now? How are the preparations going on for the big day?
Right, Siddharth, good morning to you from Washington, D.C. Well, if I were to define what the environment is like, this is a mix of excitement and also a degree of nervousness. Excitement because it is a time for elections, the final vote of the people to elect the leader of the country. But there is a degree of nervousness given the security concerns that you also highlighted in the stories and updates that you presented. Washington, for one, is being turned into a fortress. All the important building, White House, the Capitol, in front of which I'm standing at the moment, Supreme Court, another building, all of them have been heavily barricaded. And any unauthorized person will not be able to access or even go near these buildings. This is, of course, in view of what we had witnessed in 2021 January, when that insurrection attempt took place at the Capitol building. In view of that, the anticipation of violence, anticipation of unrest is why the administration is on high alert. We are seeing patrolling by security forces, by the local police, by Secret Service, sniffer dogs. The National Guards have also been activated. Remember, there was a incident of ballot box burning in Washington a few weeks ago. The investigation into it is still going on. It is the administration is trying to make sure that any such untoward incident does not happen. Remember, the emotions are very high, the sentiments are very high. It's been one of the most polarized contests that we've seen in the recent times in America. It is to be seen the party that loses, how are they going to take that news, and how are their supporters going to take that news? That's a matter of concern. But in view of that, top-notch security, drone surveillance, bulletproof glasses, as you mentioned, all of those things are put to use. A special panic button is also being installed at different polling stations, so that if any poll authority is under any pressure or is in a situation of any emergency, can immediately call for help. So all the preparations in place. Now everyone's waiting for it to turn 7 a.m. when the voting starts, the East Coast in Washington, D.C. Siddharth?
You might have had a word with the people, with local people there where you are. What are they saying? How excited are they?
Well, they're looking forward to it. Most of the people we spoke with, Siddharth, have in fact voted in the early voting rounds. We know some record 75 million votes overall in the United States have been cast by the voters in early voting. They all want the election season to now reach its conclusion peacefully. Everyone is concerned about the heightened security. It makes them wonder how real is the security threat, but they all want the elections to conclude peacefully and let the leader who has the support of the people emerge on top.
Definitely. Shubhendu, stay with us. Now, let me go across to Amit Pal Singh, who's joining us from Florida. Amrit, what are you getting for us ahead of the polls?
Well, as Shubhendu was saying, Siddharth, poll preparations have been completed. The officials, state election officials and county officials are leaving, nothing to chance, right from ensuring that the ballots are in place, people have their registrations done, and they have those lists with them. that security from a security point of view, again barricades etc. are being erected at at polling centers so that both people and the ballots can be protected, given it's a charged atmosphere. Some counties it's clear, so there's not much trouble expected, but some counties are sensitive, but as it's a charged atmosphere, so much rhetoric has been used just before the election by both sides. Tempers are running high, emotions are running high here. If the election result doesn't go their way, either party, you could see protests, you could see people come out on the streets, there is a real threat of there is a real apprehension of violence and vandalism in the various counties across the United States. And nothing is different in Florida, which is decidedly red, but earlier used to be a swing state. But as demographics change, you never know what may come out. But I am aware the county, the home county of Donald Trump is the West Palm Beach County, so which is decidedly red. Things look relatively cooler, but the county election board is taking no chances. Siddharth.
Definitely. Amrit, once the voting is over, what's the magic behind the scenes? Can you walk us through how the votes are counted and verified after the polls close?
Okay, now what happens here is that once the voting closes, the counting begins right away.
Okay.
As you know, US is divided into 6 time zones, effectively 4 because one is Hawaii and Alaska. There are 2, one for Hawaii, one for Alaska, but if you talk about the mainland, 4 zones. If you look at the time difference between East Coast and West Coast, it's 3 hours.
Okay.
So what happens is, if the eastern states finish voting, and counting begins, when trends start coming in, the western states are still voting. It's quite unlike India, where once all voting is finished, counting only begins. Here, counting begins right after that.
Okay.
Predictable states, television networks start calling out candidates based on trends, start calling the election based on trends. Swing states is where they are a little cautious and they watch each and every county and see if there is a considerable lead in most counties, then they call out the election. Here, the election is not first past the post system. It is a winner takes it all system. So say if you win more than half, even one more than half of the state, except for Nebraska and Maine, the whole state goes to you. Mostly election results are, if the election is clear, by the next day. If it's not clear, if it gets stuck, like the last time around 2020 November, remember, Joe Biden was declared 4 days after the voting took place. Here, if the swing states, as the polls suggest, are very, very close, neck and neck, if they go into recounts, if they go into lawsuits, if they go into litigation, then it could be anybody's guess as how much time it could take. It could be days, even weeks. Before a clear picture emerges as to who the winner in these presidential polls is, Siddharth.
Definitely, Amrit. Stay with us. Going across to you now, Shubhendu. However, both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, made last-minute pitch to remind voters, about their choice, and they are saying they are urging voters to come out in large numbers and vote. But did you see any change, in terms of numbers of voting? You've just told us that. In terms of early voting, around 75 million people have voted there in United.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
So, did you see any change in the numbers as compared to the last year's election? I mean, last term's election.
Siddharth, the numbers have been exceptional. This time, when we talk about the polarization of the votes, when you talk about this sort of anxiety and pressure in the air, not just on the candidates, but also on the voters, when elections get polarized, nobody wants to sit at home and watch the developments from the fence. They want to be a part of it. And that's what we are seeing this time. A record number of early voting has taken place, up to 70% at many places. People have voted in states, especially the swing states where the competition is, swing states where the most passionate campaigning has taken place by both the candidates, because these are the states, the 7 states that hold the key to the White House. Broadly are the states, red and black, a little more predictable, no prizes for guessing who's going to win there. But these 7 swing states are going to determine what is going to happen as a result of the elections. And also, when we talk about the numbers, it's very important that in these swing states, even a difference of a few hundreds could turn the table. As Amrit mentioned, that one vote more than your opponent could help you get all the electoral votes in a state.
Correct.
So in that sense, making sure that your supporters don't sit at home but come out and vote for you. Every single vote counts. And I think that's what the leaders are doing at the moment. They've talked about their issues for a long time now. They want to make sure that if there is a supporter sitting somewhere, he or she should come out and vote, and no vote should go to waste. So therefore, so much push for votes, because every single vote counts in this very close contest.
Definitely. A very quick question to you, Amrit, before I let you go. I believe where you're standing right now, few meters away, is Donald Trump's house. How's the atmosphere around there?
Oh, it's off-limits territory. Mar-a-Lago is across the lake.
Okay.
Given that there have been 2 assassination attempts on him, the Secret Service is taking no chances. Media persons like reporters like me stand across the lake because the Secret Service, the Florida police, West Palm Beach police blocked the access to that. The watch party, if he wins, is just a stone's throw away from here at the Palm County Convention Center, because the Secret Service decided that it's too risky to allow people inside Mar-a-Lago. So it is a secured area. It's an off-limits area. But you can see, not right now, though, because it's night right now here. But in the day you can see, and mostly what you can see is security personnel on the rooftops. But Trump supporters gather at the convention center where the watch party is there tomorrow evening. So that.
All right. Thank you so much, Shubhendu Ghosh and Amit Pal Singh, for your analysis. And let's take a look at what newspapers in Washington, D.C. publish about the historic U.S. presidential polls. DD India correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh reports from Ground Zero.
We are in Washington, D.C. At a little distance, this magnificent tower that you see is the Washington Monument. It's over 500-foot tall marble obelisk. It was built in the memory of the first president of the United States, George Washington. Let's now talk about who's going to be the next president of the United States. I'm turning to the Washington Post to scan through the newspapers. First, on the front page, there are these images of Donald Trump and Kamala Harris winding up their campaign just ahead of the elections. The article next to it is important, talks about the security concerns in these elections and in the aftermath of the results. Says officials try to safeguard vote count, panic buttons, drones, snipers among plans to protect the elections. Throughout the country, local officials are taking elaborate measures to fortify election-related sites, including plans for snipers on rooftop, protect the key vote-counting headquarters. Panic buttons have also been provided for election workers, and surveillance drones are also buzzing overhead. Let's turn to the next article in the same paper. The headline reads, Harris fights political headwinds on immigration in close race with Donald Trump. It is talking about the manner in which illegal immigration is really a central issue in these elections, and the stand of the leaders is going to determine what kind of support they're likely to get. There is a certain degree of nervousness among the Democrats as far as Kamala Harris's stand and work in this area is concerned, especially in swing states. A survey had talked about how the voters were sort of unsure about what she's achieved as a vice president over the issue and what she could achieve as a president. So the next paper we're looking at is the New York Times. On the front page, the headlines really captures the sense of these elections. It says, tightest contest in decades grows tighter at finish. The two parts to the article. The first one talks about a stressed electorate eagerly votes early. The early voting trends that we've seen, says an anxious America weary from the vitriolic campaign season and worried about the state of the nation's democracy, with roughly 75 million people have cast ballots in early voting period. Another part of this article talks about the shift in the swing states. Swing states are in focus, are likely to determine who's going to be the next president. The latest poll by New York Times and Siena College finds that Vice President Kamala Harris is showing new strength in the swing states of North Carolina and Georgia. Meanwhile, former US President Donald Trump has erased her lead in Pennsylvania and is maintaining a certain advantage as far as the state of Arizona is concerned. So an important insight into what's going on just at the time of the contest between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. The next article that we are picking up from the New York Times looks at how the US presidential election could have a bearing on international affairs. It's looking at the Ukraine conflict from this lens. The headline reads, Harris and Trump offer Ukraine sharply contrasting visions of future. There is an anxiety that has gripped Kiev as US is about to pick a new commander-in-chief. It gives some details of the Ukraine conflict. Ukrainian military is losing ground in eastern Ukraine at the fastest pace in years. An influx of several thousand North Korean soldiers to Russia has added unpredictable new dimension to the conflict. It also talks about that against this challenging conflict background, Ukraine is bracing for the US elections on Tuesday that will allow, almost most certainly shape the course of the future. It depends who comes into power, whether it's going to be Kamala Harris or whether it will be Donald Trump. So what happens next to Ukraine will depend greatly on who wins the presidential elections here in the United States. Those were some of the highlights from the newspapers today. With camera person Jashankar, Shubhindu Ghosh for DD India in Washington, D.C.
A day before the US election, the Biden administration stepped up criticism of Israel for not doing enough to improve humanitarian conditions in Gaza. The US State Department called the results not good enough as a 30-day deadline looms for Israeli officials to meet certain requirements or risk potential restrictions on military assistance. The message was conveyed by US Secretary of State Antony Blinken to Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant during a phone call. The Secretary emphasized the importance of ending the conflict in Gaza and bringing all of the hostages home, as well as planning post-conflict situation.
As of today, the situation has not significantly turned around. We have seen an increase in some measurements. We've seen an increase in the number of crossings that are open, but just if you look at the stipulated recommendations in the letter, those have not been met. We're not at the end of the period yet. They have not. If you look at what we ultimately judge, what we ultimately judge on, which is the results on the ground, the results are not good enough today. They certainly do not have a passing grade. They have failed. I said they have failed to implement all of the things that we recommend in that letter. Now, that said, we are not at the end of the 30-day period. It's not the end of the semester. You don't hand out grades in the middle.
Meanwhile, as the world leaders continue to urge immediate ceasefire in Gaza, reportedly the United States and Saudi Arabia are discussing a potential security agreement that wouldn't involve a broader deal with Israel. Sources say the agreement under discussion is not a full defense treaty. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and the White House want to reach the agreement before President Joe Biden leaves office in January. Further, a day after Israel notified the United Nations of ending decades-old ties with UNRWA, UN Chief Antonio Gutteres has said that Israel's ban on its operations will lead to the collapse of aid in Gaza. He added that UN lawyers are reviewing the move. However, the end of 1967 agreement is immediate.
General, he continues to believe that the work of UNRWA is performing in the occupied Palestinian territory is essential, and that there is no alternative to UNRWA as we see it. If the law is fully implemented, right, and Israel makes it impossible for UNRWA to continue it to operate, this will have no effect on Israel's responsibility to provide for the population, and any failure to provide the necessary support to the population will be Israel's responsibility. We're obviously, our lawyers and UNRWA's lawyers are also taking a closer look at the letter.
The United States too has opposed the Israeli legislation on UNRWA and was studying the Israeli letter to the UN to learn what the implications might be. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has for years called for UNRWA to be dismantled, accusing it of anti-Israeli incitement. And to give us more details on it, I've been joined by my colleague Amit Mukarji, who's joining us from New Delhi. Hi Amit, a very good morning to you. Amit, what specific actions or conditions is the US government demanding from Israel to improve humanitarian conditions in Gaza?
Well, so that very basic requirements that was actually put out by US, amidst reports of genocides and increased military activity in Gaza by Israeli forces. US has been categorically demanding supply of humanitarian aid, particularly medicines and essential supplies, and of course food, because there's a lot of report of starvation in the Gaza area right now. Amidst the ongoing conflict, which has been there for the last almost over a year now. And United States, like we saw in the statement of White House also, that it has been demanding a lot of things from Israel to put things right on ground and provide aid to people who are suffering out there, which includes children also. But again, even the United States is very, very categorical in stating that, nothing really has worked out as far as ground realities are concerned. In fact, if you look at what has been happening, leave aside humanitarian aid, the Israeli operations are continuing in Gaza because they still perceive a lot of threat from the existing, remaining Hamas squads, which they believe are still present in Gaza right now. So they are mounting consistent attack repeatedly every now and then, to eliminate the last of the Hamas, as Benjamin Netanyahu had earlier vowed, when he declared the war against Hamas. Siddharth?
All right, thank you so much. We leave it there, Amit. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zhilinsky said on Monday there are 11,000 North Korean military personnel operating in Russia's Kursk region. Speaking in his evening video address, Zhilinsky added that the response from Ukraine's partners has not increased despite allegedly more numbers of North Koreans aiding Russian troops in the ongoing conflict.
There was a separate report today from the main intelligence directorate and foreign intelligence service regarding North Korea military personnel in Russia. Already 11,000 personnel in the Kursk region. We see an increase in North Koreans, but unfortunately, we don't see any increased reaction from our partners.
Meanwhile, the US said it is greatly concerned about the partnership between North Korea and Russia, with State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller saying North Korean troops could enter combat in the coming days. On Monday, Putin, who signed a treaty with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in June that includes a mutual defense clause, has neither confirmed nor denied the North Korean troop presence.
Be greatly concerned about the partnership between North Korea and Russia. You saw the secretary speak to the fact on Thursday that North Korea has deployed as many as 10,000 troops to Russia, and that we were concerned that they would move to the front lines to enter the fight against Ukraine. As the secretary said on Friday that as many as 8,000 North Korean troops had made their way to Kursk. We now assess that as many as 10,000 have made their way to Kursk and could enter combat in the coming days.
The Pentagon said on Monday that there were at least 10,000 North Korean troops in Russia's Kursk, but could not corroborate reports that they were engaged in combat. Pentagon spokesman Major General Patrick Ryder said there were indications that the North Korean troops would provide combat or combat support capabilities.
That there are now at least 10,000 DPRK forces in the Kursk Oblast, recognizing that as we continue to assess DPRK presence on the ground, those numbers could go up slightly in terms of the total number of DPRK troops in Russia. We've seen the press reports about alleged combat ops. We're looking into those, but at this point cannot corroborate those reports. But as you heard Secretary Austin say last week, should these troops engage in combat support operations against Ukraine, they would become legitimate military targets.
North Korea fired an unidentified ballistic missile toward the sea east of Korean Peninsula. The launch was Kim Jong-un's first weapons test since being accused of sending soldiers to Russia. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said its second launch in days and just hours before Americans vote for a new president. The Japanese government also said North Korea fired what could be a ballistic missile. The launch came just hours after US and South Korean defense chiefs called on Pyongyang to withdraw its troops, warning that North Korean soldiers in Russian uniforms were being deployed for possible action against Ukraine. The launch comes just days after Pyongyang said it tested an intercontinental ballistic missile, prompting condemnation from the South, the United States and Japan, with the three countries conducting a joint military exercise in response. The United States has called out Russia and China at the United Nations Security Council for protecting and emboldening North Korea to further violate UN sanctions. The 15-member council was meeting over Pyongyang's test launch on Thursday of an intercontinental ballistic missile. US Ambassador to the UN said Russia and China had prevented the council from issuing a statement of condemnation, a move that needs consensus. North Korea's UN ambassador Kim Song told the Security Council that Pyongyang would accelerate the buildup of its nuclear force to counter any threat presented by hostile nuclear weapon sites. In fact, states and meanwhile, Russia and China rejected the US remarks on Monday. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Celebrating rich heritage of Buddhism. The 4-day-long Chhat Puja festivities begin with the ritual of Nahai Khai. Rajasthan Tourism booms. We'll tell you the reason after the break.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy, always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj, and a quick recap of the headlines. US voters to elect the 47th President of the United States of America. Both Harris and Trump make last-minute appeal to voters to exercise their franchise. US expresses dissatisfaction over humanitarian aid situation in Gaza. Says Israel must get more aid into Gaza ahead of 30-day deadline. North Korea fired several short-range missiles towards sea east of the Korean peninsula. Japan says missile fell outside its exclusive economic zone. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar condemns attack on Hindu temple in Canada. Says Canada has developed a pattern of making allegations without providing specifics. India remains deeply concerned about the safety and security of Indian nationals in Canada, especially after the violent disruption outside consular camp in Brampton, Ontario on Sunday. After Prime Minister Narendra Modi said such acts of violence will never weaken India's resolve, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar too expressed concern, saying it was unacceptable that Indian diplomats had been placed under surveillance by Canada.
What happened at the Hindu temple in Canada was obviously deeply concerning. You would have seen the statement first by our official spokesperson and also the expression of concern by our Prime Minister yesterday. That should, I think, convey to you how deeply we feel about it. Canada has developed a pattern of making allegations without providing specifics. Secondly, when we look at Canada, for us, the fact that they're putting our diplomats under surveillance is something which is unacceptable.
Earlier on Monday, the Ministry of External Affairs said India condemns the acts of violence perpetrated by extremists and separatists with an expectation that those indulging in violence will be prosecuted. And DD India correspondent Meghna Dev is joining us live to give us more inputs on what's happening in this particular incident. Hi Meghna, we all know what happened outside Hindu Sabha temple in Brampton. Prime Minister Narendra Modi strongly condemned the violence and said such actions will never weaken India's resolve. And now, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar too expressed concern, saying it was unacceptable that Indian diplomats had been placed under surveillance by Canada. Now, Meghna, can you provide more details about the nature of this surveillance and how the Indian government plans to address this issue diplomatically?
So when we're actually talking about the issue that was raised by India in terms of surveillance that was carried out by the Canadian government on the officials of the consulate, on their communication as well, I have a statement of the Ministry of External Affairs where they have said that some of the consular officials were recently informed by the Canadian government that they have been and continue to be under audio and video surveillance. Their communications have also been intercepted. Now, we have also formally protested to the Canadian government as we deem these actions to be flagrant violation of relevant diplomatic and consular conventions. Now, this has been, and when we actually see that already our diplomats and the officials of the consulate are already functioning under extreme circumstances, under violent circumstances, in not a good environment, if we can say. And besides that, when these kind of surveillance is being carried out by the Canadian government, audio and video surveillance is being put in, that is definitely flagrant violation of diplomatic and consular conventions. Now, having said that, a number of issues have been raised by the Indian side time and again to the Canadian authorities that our officials, diplomats, higher officials of the High Commission and consulate are not safe. But then also there was no step that was taken by the Canadian authorities. So this actually shows that how careless or probably how the Canadian authorities are ignoring this serious matter. Having said that, now when we are talking about the violence that happened at the consular camp in Brampton, at the Hindu Sabha temple in Brampton, we definitely do see that now 3 arrests have been made. The 3 people will be produced in the Ontario High Court. But this actually paints a picture that after a lot of pressure was put in on the Canadian authorities, they have come up with 3 arrests. So were the Canadian authorities not actually taking stronger action, when the violence erupted? Besides that, also today, the Indian diaspora is carrying out protests against these anti-India elements, against the Canadian authorities, and obviously the people who did the violence at this religious place, at the Hindu Sabha temple. So the Indian diaspora has come together to protest at the Hindu Sabha temple in Brampton, as well as in Surrey at the Lakshmi Narayan temple, and in more places also it is expected that the Indian diaspora will show their strong protest, will lodge a very strong protest in, against the anti-India elements and against the people who are doing violence at such religious places.
Definitely, Meghna. But what, apart from the fact that diaspora will be protesting today, in wake of what happened outside the Hindu Sabha temple, what actions are being taken by the Canadian authorities in this regard?
So the Canadian authorities, as I told you, Siddharth, first they have arrested 3 people. That's what we said. But we will have to see what kind of court proceedings follow after that. Will there any stricter measures be taken by the Canadian authorities on these 3 people who were part of the violence that happened at Brampton? Or more people will more people be arrested in this regard is also a question. Will stricter action be taken will also be a question, because time and again, when our diplomats were threatened, when posters of our diplomat, giving them death threats, all of that had emerged, there was no strong action that was taken by the Canadian authorities, and it was passed away just by saying that it is freedom of speech or freedom of protest. So while this has happened and this has been the behavioral pattern of the Canadian authorities and the Canadian government, we will have to see if any stricter action is taken apart from the arrest. What we will definitely have to see is that now when Prime Minister Narendra Modi has posted on X about this, he has also said that he expects that the Canadian authorities take some action. But obviously, he has also said that this will not deter the resolve and spirit of the diaspora or the consulate officials. Very importantly, another aspect is that time and again, Canadian authorities, the behavioral pattern of Canadian authorities and the Canadian government, the Trudeau government, has been supporting people who run anti-India agenda, supporting people who are anti-India elements, who do anti-India activities. So time and again this has happened. Now there were false, baseless references also made to Union Home Minister Amit Shah in a committee. So what we do definitely see, and time and again, false insinuations and concocted stories are given to the international media to smear India's image, to malign India's image on international platforms. So this has been a very conscious strategy of the Trudeau government to malign India's image. But we definitely see that whenever India gives out an information that this is the person who we want, extradition requests are sent, or this is the person who is carrying out India activities on your soil, their citizenship is fast-tracked, or the extradition request, no heed is paid to that. So time and again, this has happened, and that may be one of the reasons that Prime Minister Narendra Modi had to post about it, because the lethargy or probably the kind of inactivity that the Canadian government is showing in
lackadaisical attitude.
And now it is not only that; it is also about the concern for the safety of Indian nationals, the Indian diaspora in Canada.
All right, we leave it there. Thank you so much, Meghna, for your inputs. Thank you so much for that analysis. Meanwhile, Dr. S. Jaishankar is currently on Australia visit in the first leg of his two-nation tour. Visited Australia's humanitarian logistics capability warehouse of humanitarian assistance and disaster relief supplies to the Pacific. Disaster relief in Indo-Pacific is an emerging element of bilateral ties. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar appreciated Australia's support for delivery of relief material to Papua New Guinea in June 2024. HADR has also been an important element of Quad endeavours. Earlier on Monday, Jaishankar inaugurated the Consulate General of India in Brisbane. The new consulate in Brisbane is India's fourth in Australia, alongside existing consulates in Sydney, Melbourne and Perth. It will contribute to strengthening India's ties with Queensland state, promoting trade, fostering educational linkages and serving the diaspora. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar co-chaired the 15th Foreign Ministers Framework Dialogue with Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong in Canberra. Sharing a post on X, he wrote, and I quote, "Our comprehensive strategic partnership is growing steadily, reflected in stronger political ties, robust defence and security cooperation, expanded trade, greater mobility and deeper educational linkages. Discussed our respective neighbourhoods, Indo-Pacific, West Asia, Ukraine and the global strategic scenario." To celebrate the rich heritage of Buddhism, Indian government in collaboration with International Buddhist Confederation is hosting the first Asian Buddhist Summit on November 5-6 in national capital. The summit themed role of Buddha Dhamma in strengthening Asia will feature esteemed Sangha leaders, scholars and practitioners from across the continent, fostering dialogue and understanding while addressing contemporary challenges faced by the Buddhist community. The President of India, Draupadi Murmu, will attend the event as chief guest. Chhat Puja, one of the most auspicious Hindu festivals, celebrates the worship of sun god, begins today with religious fervor and gaiety. The 4-day-long Chhat Puja involves fasting, bathing in rivers or ponds, and offering prayers to the setting and the rising sun. The festival is celebrated as a way of showing thanks to Sun God for sustaining life on earth and seeking his benevolence for prosperity, health and happiness. The energy of the sun is believed to cure diseases, increase lifespan and bring peace. By worshipping the sun and goddess Chhati, devotees pray for divine protection for their families. Delhi's air quality remained in the very poor category for the 7th consecutive day on Tuesday. According to the Central Pollution Control Board, a majority of the pollution hotspots in the national capital remained in the severe category throughout the day. Prevailing unfavorable meteorological conditions of low wind speeds in the day and calm winds at night kept the AQI levels hovering near the severe category for the last 2 days. The particulate matter pollution was 3 times higher than the national prescribed standard in the city. Taking a note on the growing pollution in the city, the Supreme Court has taken very seriously the fact that the ban on burning firecrackers during Diwali has not been implemented. The Supreme Court has issued a notice to Police Commissioner and asked him to file an affidavit and explain why this ban was not implemented. The hearing of this case will now be held on November 11. During the peak tourist season, Jaipur, the capital city of Rajasthan, has seen an influx of thousands of locals and tourists visiting its famous tourist attractions. Known for its rich history, vibrant culture and architectural marvels, Jaipur, also known as the Pink City, is a favorite destination for both domestic and international travelers. The city's majestic palaces, forts, temples and bustling markets make it a must-visit spot on many travelers, particularly during the cooler months when the weather is more favorable for sightseeing. And still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. European stocks close lower ahead of US election. Tech stocks down 1%. Kannada short film Sunflowers were the first ones to know heads to Oscars 2025. Sudarshan Patnaik wishes Virat Kohli on his birthday by creating magnificent sand sculpture.
Who will be the next president of United States of America?
Will Donald Trump make a dramatic comeback, or will Kamala Harris become America's first woman president?
It's a tight race to the White House.
The knives are out and the battle lines sharply drawn.
He's becoming increasingly unstable and unhinged.
She's a threat to democracy because she shouldn't even be the candidate.
I'm Amit Pal Singh.
I'm Shubhendu Ghosh.
We travel across the United States
To decode the issues at the heart of this polarized election.
Watch this space only on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. And Abu Dhabi's premier energy forum, the Abu Dhabi International Petroleum Exhibition and Conference or ADIPEC 2024 began on Monday, where the India Pavilion is also presenting the nation's comprehensive energy vision through the theme Innovate to Illuminate India's Energy Future. Leading Indian oil and gas companies and Engineers India Limited are showcasing their technological capabilities and facilities here, showcasing its leadership in executing world-class projects in offshore oil and gas and LNG sectors. EIL is welcoming all valued stakeholders and collaborators to join their projects in India and overseas.
To the business of consultancy for the hydrocarbon industry, and now we are also offering a lot of solutions for sustainability solutions, green hydrogen, artificial intelligence based tools. We have got a big office in Abu Dhabi which is basically catering to mainly ad hoc business, both supporting their current P5 program as well as their sustainability solutions. We are working for the energy efficiency projects for them, which will decarbonize their existing refineries, and also on many artificial intelligence based tenders that are coming to us. We are participating in those so that we can work for them on sustainability solutions in future.
The 4-day event celebrating its 40th anniversary under the theme Connecting Minds, Transforming Energy has attracted 54 national and international energy companies. The event concludes on November 7th.
Our delicate canvas is one we must all.
European and US stock markets dipped while the dollar slid Monday as investors determined themselves for a coin toss US presidential election, an interest rate decision and expected Chinese stimulus measures. Oil prices rallied more than 2% after 8 members of the OPEC Plus group of producers said Sunday that they would extend supply cuts until the end of next month. They had been delaying output hikes on worries about slowing demand in China and the United States. While Asian markets gained, tracking a positive lead from Wall Street ahead of the weekend, European markets were mostly lower and US markets wobbled. The dollar has started Tuesday on the defensive as traders squared positions on day of the US presidential election after recent polls dented some of the market bets on a victory of Republican Donald Trump. Democrat Kamala Harris has also experienced improving odds on election gambling sites and has a slight lead on Predator. Although poly market continues to show Trump as a favorite, the US currency slumped as much as 0.76% against the euro overnight. The 3-week through after weekend opinion poll showed Harris with surprise lead in Iowa, a traditional Republican stronghold. Overall, however, polls continue to show a tight race. The dollar index was flat at 103.92 after slumping as low as 103.67 on Monday for the first time since October 21st. New York Times added fewer digital subscribers than expected in the third quarter as readers cut back on spending in an uncertain economy, sending the publisher's shares down 8%, even as ad sales jumped on Monday. Digital advertising sales at New York Times jumped 8.8%, its strongest growth in more than 2 years. The Times aims to reach 15 million digital subscribers by 2027. It crossed 11 million in the third quarter. NYT forecasts subscription revenue to increase by 7% to 9% in the fourth quarter, the midpoint of which was slightly below estimates of 8.2%. The Film and Television Institute of India's award-winning Kannada short film Sunflowers were the first ones to know has qualified for the Oscars 2025 in the live-action short film category. This milestone follows a series of accolades, including winning first prize in the prestigious Larsen F selection at the Cannes Film Festival earlier this year, which brought international attention to the film. Set in a rustic village, the movie revolves around an elderly woman who disrupts her community by stealing a rooster, leading to the disappearance of sunlight and sending the village into chaos. To restore balance, a prophecy is invoked and the woman's family is exiled, embarking on a journey to retrieve the rooster. The quest captures not just the desperation of the characters, but also the deep-rooted beliefs of the community, reflecting the rich tapestry of Indian folk traditions. You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for sport. And incoming Manchester United manager Ruben Amorim took training at the Sporting Lisbon ahead of his side's Champions League clash with Manchester City on Tuesday. It will be Amorim's final European match in charge of club before he takes over at Old Trafford on November 11. The 39-year-old Amorim will join United on a contract until 2027 with a club option for an additional year, replacing Erik ten Hag, who United sacked last month. Known for his charismatic style, Amorim took Sporting to Primera Liga titles in 2021 and 2024, and they lead the standings again this season. AC Milan trained on Monday ahead of the Champions League clash with Real Madrid, knowing the need to avoid defeat in Spain to boost their qualification hopes. Paulo Fonseca's side will face 15-time European Cup champions Real Madrid after securing their first points in the competition this season with a 3-1 home win over Belgian champions Club Brugge. The 7-time European champions had been one of 8 sides winless after 2 games. Milan will face champions Real Madrid on Tuesday and currently find themselves outside the qualification spots in the 36-team league table. Liverpool trained at their Melwood base ahead of welcoming back their former midfielder and current Bayer Leverkusen manager Xavi Alonso for their Champions League group match at Anfield on Tuesday. Liverpool have a perfect record in European football this season ahead of welcoming the current German champions, who are also unbeaten in 3 continental ties. Liverpool and Leverkusen have previously met on 4 occasions in the Champions League, but not since Alonso was playing for the Reds. Tuesday's encounter will be their first meeting since the 2004-05 last 16, which saw Liverpool win 6-2 on aggregate. Pakistan suffered a narrow 2-wicket defeat in the opening ODI against Australia at the iconic Melbourne cricket ground on Monday. Cummins led Australia to victory, guiding his team through a tense chase while chasing despite promising starts from Matthew and Jake Fraser-McGurk. It was Stephen Smith and Josh Inglis who steadied the innings with a solid 85-run partnership, ultimately securing the win in 33.3 overs. We now take you to East India's Odisha, where renowned sand artist Sudarshan Patnaik has created a sand sculpture on the occasion of Indian cricketer Virat Kohli's 36th birthday at Puri Beach. That's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms, and you can scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.